Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. With me in the studio, I still have Professor Bola Akinterinwa, Director General of Bolytag Centre for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Chike Ogeah, former Commissioner for Information, Delta State. Yemi Ademolekun, Executive Director in Office of, and Professor David Arowaro, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos, Nigeria. Well, we have our two guests so far, touching on very important issues. President Buhari signing the Electoral Act Amendment Bill into law. And now Nigeria has Electoral Act 2022. And then, of course, the tension, in Ukraine. And the implications of all of that are the national, geopolitical, and also the implications for Nigerian citizens, over 10,000 of them who are caught in that conflict. But let's start with the electoral bill. I saw you on television on February 22.
Tuesday.
You were one of the protesters at the Unity Fountain.
Peaceful protesters.
Okay, one of the peaceful protesters. You all wanted President Buhari to sign the bill into law. Now he has done so. Yeah. So what do you say to that? President Buhari as a listening president, or civil society as a very resilient group, forcing the president to do the right thing. And how right is his assent to that proposed bill, now law?
In fairness to Mr. President, he'd been very clear that he wanted improved elections to be part of his legacy. So him signing the bill, I think, is aligned with that. There was some concern because he had rejected it, I think, 5 or 6 times. Five times. 5 times previously to him assenting to it. So there was a bit of concern around, okay, you're saying it, but your actions are not speaking to it. And then in December, when he sent it back, he had stated very categorically that once they changed the provisions for primaries, that he would sign it. So after this was transmitted to him at the end of January, and he wasn't in the country, nobody was saying anything, there was then a bit of concern around what was going on. And then obviously the clause 84 came up, and that was sort of an issue. And we're like, you know what? If that's the only thing, just go ahead and sign the bill so that we can keep our election dates and we don't have to start, which is invariably what happened. INEC has postponed elections by a week. But Mr. President has honored his word in the fact that he wanted to give us a better legal framework, but with the proviso that the National Assembly amend that line. So I think it's a bit of both. Civil society was not just February. What you saw on February 22nd was not just that. Civil society organizations have been working on this for 7 odd years. And so it is really exciting that our 2023 elections have a better legal framework for us to have more free, fair, and credible elections. And we're quite excited about that. So yeah, I would say it's a bit of both. President honor his word and civil society ensuring that he honors his word.
Well, so we can take this as part of the legacy of President Muhammadu Buhari.
Indeed.
He signed the PIA, he signed the Disabilities Prohibition of Discrimination Against Persons with Disability Bill. Yeah. And now, under his watch, he has signed the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. But Chike, what for you is the importance of all of this? Because Samson Utodo, the Executive Director of Yaga Africa, who was our guest, was saying it's one thing to sign a bill into law, it's another thing to ensure that on election day or during the electoral process, these new provisions in that law are observed to the letter.
Well, if you ask me, I would say, just like Yemi has said, it is a welcome development. The president just did his job, if you ask me, because that's part of his duty to assent to bills that are passed on to him after they've been concluded by the National Assembly. For me, the good thing is that, yes, like you rightly said, it gives a better framework for having transparent and quality elections. Why do I say so? Situations like timelines, which are very important, and those other sections that deals with disabilities. But more importantly, those clauses that deals with how INEC itself, who are the ombudsman of the elections, can collate, can transmit, and all of that. So all those are laws. The use of the card reader, the beavers, those are all legal tools that we know now that no court can oust. But like Samson said, it's good. A letter, a law is as good as the paper it is written on. The important thing is the will, of our law enforcement agents, of our courts, all of them to do the right things when eventually, these things come to them when they have to play their various roles. Of course, we are hoping that with this kind of quality electoral bill in place, that it will reduce the issues that we've been seeing where it seems as if to see the judiciary has been the determinant of the outcome of our elections. So to that extent, we hope to see less cases in court and more, because if there are less people complaining about being cheated, about elections being rigged, ab initio, and all of that, then we are, making some good progress. That is the way I see it. But the Section 84, which is the, little critical thing here.
Little critical.
Yes. The truth is that that section is very dicey. That is what the Assembly itself is using to have a little bit of an upper hand against the executive, because don't forget, the executive can also use that section to knock them off. So there's a little bit of this and that. Now the president is trying to twist them to say, you must do this because these executive people are my people and I want to protect them, obviously, to give them a leg in, for the election. So I will see how that goes, because in as much as people say the National Assembly is a rubber stamp and all of that, I don't see them using the knife to cut themselves. So this is a good test for them, and I'm really hoping to see how this works out.
It's an interesting, I think it's interesting because you're also a lawyer. Because for me, the president referenced sections 40, I believe, and 42 of the Constitution when he spoke about it, and just generally spoke about rights. And I'm not sure, and then he also then referenced section 66, which you talked about earlier, about 30 days. Now, I'm not sure that in the National Assembly putting this clause, that there's really anything that they're breaking. Section 66 talks about 30 days. INEC did not say, or this clause does not say after 30 days. It's still before. It's way before 30 days, but it's still before 30 days. And as we know, I have a right to freedom of movement, but during COVID, the government said I should stay home for a greater good. So I can't say because I have a right for freedom of movement, I want to go out. So I think, and just to echo Samson's statement as well, the National Assembly has an opportunity to look at this clause and interpret it in the best interest of all. And we cannot overemphasize how it is not a playing field for a political appointee that has access to the resources of the state, the treasury in some situations, and the infrastructure of the state to run against a citizen who does not have the same resources. So the idea is, for a level playing field, let everybody resign before primary so we know that we're competing at the same level. Obviously, it's a bit inconvenient, because if by June primaries are done, that technically means any minister that wants to run for office needs to resign by June. And so that is a bit uncomfortable. And this is your point about the legislature and the executive. Right. But it's from a fairness point of view and in the greater good, I think it's an important clause. And it'll be very interesting to see, depending on what the National Assembly agreed to get Mr. President to sign, it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out.
Well, although I hear Professor Akinterinwa that the governors and political office holders had to put pressure on the president to object to Section 84, subsection 12, because it's the same political office holders who bring the money for driving the electoral process, either at the primaries level or at the Congress level. And many of them have been complaining that if they are required to resign, they will not have access to state resources, and that nobody should expect anybody to bring money. What do you think of that?
You have answered the question you asked me. In this case, governors are bringing money. From where? Who has the money? It's government's money. So you are bringing government's money to come and fund your individual interest something. No. You see, Yemi's submission reminded me of what our president has done, that he has signed, but with a proviso. Now, that word proviso is synonymous with a condition, conditionality. And I'm asking myself, because of that proviso, has the bill that has been signed into law is no longer a law that is enforceable? No. It has been signed.
Yeah.
So whether there is a proviso, in this case, will not remove of the fact that the law is now enforceable.
Yes.
That's right.
And that everybody must comply with it. Now, the proviso will only be meaningful only to the extent that in the near future, when the National Assembly has right and time to examine, to investigate that particular Section 84, paragraph 12, it is then that they can have a review. But for now, the law is there. Second point, I ask, are public servants, civil servants, what they are they representing, protecting individual interests or political party interests when they are in the public service? I am not unaware of the fact that there are constitutional provisions. No doubt. There is no whiff of doubt at that level. But the issue now is that you are in public service. You are a civil servant. You are a public servant. And the mere fact that you are a public servant necessarily makes you a non-partisan politician. All right. You are either a public servant or a politician. So the idea according to which preventing public servants, or political appointees from contesting, from being nominated, from being voted for, as negating the Constitution is untenable. It's certainly untenable. It's an issue of interpretation now. Yeah. You see, when you are a political appointee, the word political, adjective qualifying appointee, makes you completely different. And that is why, for instance, the Constitution itself says, if you want to contest, you are given 30 days within which to resign, which means that there is conflict of interest already. It's an implicit recognition. Now, the mere fact that there's a new provision according to which 6 months to the time you should resign, to give you ample time to go and prepare, consult, go to your constituencies, rather than firefighting brigade approach, I think it is quite good. So in this case, I think that political parties, appointees should not, in any case, be given unnecessarily undue advantage.
Okay, before we move on, let's look quickly at the other issue that we have discussed today with Professor Bola Akinterinwa, which is the issue in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine, between Russia and NATO, between Russia and United States and the allies and all of that. And the natural place to start is with you, Professor Akinterinwa.
First point, Professor Gideofo made some factual points, but the conclusion he gave did not reflect the observations he made. He told us that the 1823 Monroe Doctrine was the immediate, that's the word he used, a factor responsible for the invasion. I do not agree with him at all on that.
No, I thought what he was saying was that the U.S. had no moral right to, attack Russia because the U.S. are, dependent on the Monroe Doctrine to do exactly the same thing in other parts of the world. So
you also
in Israel, it looks like hypocrisy.
You gave another interpretation to which I subscribe, that, look, the Americans have the right to oversee their immediate environment.
That's what the Monroe Doctrine says.
Good. I am saying that is not what is responsible for the invasion. It's not. If he's talking about the Bush Doctrine, I will agree with him. Bush Doctrine is a redefinition of the 1823 Monroe Doctrine. And what does the Bush Doctrine say? It now says that, look, under no circumstance should the Americans accept any country in the world to challenge the superiority, the integrity, of the Americans.
It's the same thing. No. American exceptionalism.
Hold on. It's not the same thing.
The American foreign policy process is based on exceptionalism.
No, hold on. You see, there is the need to articulate some concepts.
Okay.
Because Bush Doctrine says that, look, that's the basis of why we now have two superpowers. Because Bush Doctrine says that we will not entertain anybody challenging the U.S. in international relations. Point one. Point two, that there must be a consistent policy of monitoring the then Soviet Union. And in particular, that, look, under no circumstance would Russia, then Soviet Union, be given any opportunity to sit, at par. That's the logic. Now, when this matter was presented to President Kennedy, he considered it too imperialistic, quote and unquote. It was on that basis they went back and said, okay, look, our relationship with the Soviet Union must be such that we accommodate one another. That was how the concept of two superpowers came into being, to accommodate one another. But thereafter, in 1996, the agreement that was struck, agreed to, changed. The Americans now said, look, we wouldn't still entertain anybody challenging them. They now decided, and that is where I only agree with Professor Gideon when he's talking about the expansion of the NATO. Please, the Secretary of State, James Baker, now reached an agreement with the Russians that in the spirit of these two superpowers that we are together, under no circumstance will NATO extend its influence into all the countries that emerged following the Russian glasnost and perestroika during the restructuring and openness. The agreement was struck. But the Americans now decided to now say, look, we are Americans, and nobody should be allowed to be given that same status.
No, Prof. Gorbachev, in an interview yesterday, has just said that that was as far as the limit to East Germany.
No.
And that it does not cover the entire East.
Yeah, that is one school of thought.
That's out there. No, it's not school of thought.
No, school of thought.
Gorbachev gave an interview to say so.
There's one professor, one journalist.
He's not journalist.
Hold on.
This was an interview. Mikhail Gorbachev himself.
No, I want to refer to Yale University. There was a debate in Yale University.
Okay, Prof.
Let me make this point very clear. You see, when it is an academic debate, let the facts be well established.
These are facts that are out there in the public domain.
Yes, there, but I read that of Gorbachev.
Are you saying Gorbachev is lying?
No, they struck. Do you know why they struck an agreement with Gorbachev? Why?
Which agreement? This agreement was September 1990. And it was a major player in it.
No, let's look at it chronologically. Gorbachev, for instance, and Yeltsin were made to agree, all right, that look, if, for instance, you are able to move towards democratization, now Russia, Soviet Union, all of them will be integrated within the European security system. And that we will be doing this, it was a choice between friendship and partnership.
Prof, can we deal with the substantive issues?
Yes. No.
Of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, the implications for the global international order, and the Nigerian role and Nigerian response in the matter. Let's leave the history, because there are many versions of this history. What you are quoting, there are things I can send to you that contradict what you are saying. Can we deal with the substantive issues?
I don't know how you want to deal with substantive issues without agreeing on what the factual situation is, because we'll be giving implications of one version of the truth. However, let me react to your own version of the truth.
No, not my version. What is out there?
Well, that's what has happened. I guess maybe an easier way to think about it as what has happened.
Yeah, let's deal with the substance.
You see, for some people, Russia is the aggressor. All right? For some people, it is a...
So what's your opinion?
My opinion is simply that an agreement that was reached, because in the eyes of Russia, they trusted the Americans. But the Americans did not comply with the spirit of the agreement. Okay. And therefore, they now say, under no circumstance would they trust America. And that was why Putin now decided to act.
So what does Ukraine have to do with America? Because it's Ukraine, he's aggressing. I mean, he's
the issue is that Ukraine wants to be a member of NATO.
Yes.
And
no, Prof. We've never heard that. Nobody has said Ukraine wants to be a member of NATO. Nobody is. I mean, it's nothing conclusive.
Please.
I don't even know whether NATO itself wants them as a member. So this is just like Ruben is saying.
Zelensky has come into the open to say now that they will not do anything about joining.
I think if you ask
me, always been an
Prof,
issue.
The issues are simple, very, very simple. Ukraine was a part of Russia before. We all know that was what the professor said. And based on that, going forward, this whole situation has ensued, and the Americans are trying to... this goes back to the Bay of Pigs fiasco, as far as I'm concerned, and the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, where 90 miles off the American coast, there was activity of nuclear weapons being deployed in Cuba. And the America, under this sphere of influence situation, said, no, we can't have that. And that is exactly what the Russians think is happening in Ukraine now. And they are saying a place that not only have some of our natives living there, which is just by our border, we are also not going to accept that. And that is what we are seeing that is playing out.
You see,
and that's why they said at the end of the day, let them go into this, their brinkmanship, their negotiations, and let them sort it out. Because you see, the difference between 1962 and 2022, you know how many years it is? Now, any situation between the West and the East is going to be MAD, M-A-D, mutually assured destruction. And it's not going to be fought with weapons and all what we are seeing. Someone will sit down somewhere and press a nuclear button. Okay. And even us in Africa will have implications. There will be implications for us here.
We can continue this conversation.
So we have to be careful what we are looking at.
Those are the determining dates. Go and look at James Baker's report. Anyway. It has been declassified. Yale University declassified the meeting of...
Prof, we're doing television. We just want our viewers to get all sides of the issue. But let's just stay on that part. Very quickly, let's stop arguing in the studio. I'd like to bring in Professor David Arowaro. Professor Arowaro, yes, what's going on in Ukraine?
Yeah, the Ukraine crisis is very concerning, as it should be, because any violent conflict has its impacts, and see the impact of this in the destruction, in the people who are displaced internally, refugees moving to other countries, and all that. So it's very concerning. What I've seen in the analysis of the crisis is that you see people leaning either towards the United States or leaning towards Russia, and that is coloring the analysis. To put it very simple, in this conflict, Russia is the aggressor. Russia is the aggressor because Ukraine is an independent state. All of these politics of sphere of influence, I see people talking about United States, Monroe Doctrine of 1823, and all the other, the Bay of Peace, 1962. People like us who have, studied the global system and the ways and means by which stability can be ensured, have always condemned these politics of sphere of influence. We have always condemned it when the United States does it. And now we condemn it, not that Russia is doing it. Russia and the US are striking an agreement. Where is the interest of Ukraine in all of this? Ukraine is an independent state. So when the US, yes, when US carries on its interventionism, we condemn it because it leads to global instability. The same way as you are condemning it now that Russia is doing it. So to cite the Monroe Doctrine and to cite the Bay of Peace incident as a way of justifying Russia's invasion of Ukraine and independence.
That's not what you're saying.
Nobody's doing that. Where is he getting that from? It's justifying.
We've seen people do that.
That's not what he said.
The professor who spoke, he says he doesn't see Russia as the aggressor. Russia is the aggressor. Russia has gone to invade an independent state that has a right to make its decision. It is true that the reality of international politics, the big countries try to define, the world according to their mode. That's the reality. But it's a reality that is causing instability in the global system, which is what we condemn. So the politics of sphere of influence, we can see some of the, consequences in this invasion, of Ukraine. Why is the interest of Ukraine not being talked about? Why are people talking about just Russia, Crimea, and where is the interest of Ukraine in all of this? An independent state. So, to my mind, the way forward is, of course, we have to return to diplomacy. There has to be some concession that we granted to Russia, and then Ukraine too will have, of course, will also have his own, position on the table, and then give and take here and there, and then the conflict can stop. Prof talked about Third World War and refugees coming to Africa. If there's a Third World War, he will not sit down in Nasarawa and speak. Everybody will perish. So we should perish the idea of talking about Third World War. What we should focus on, of course, he said it rhetorically. What we should focus on is how to get back to this in this conflict, to diplomacy, such that the brinkmanship is enough. We have reached this point where a war has been declared, destruction has taken place. Let us return to negotiations now. Let concessions be granted. Russia will certainly get some concessions. And of course, Ukraine too will get concessions, and we can then move on. To my mind, that is the way forward in this Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Professor Arowaro. Let's move on. I'm sure the conversation will continue after the program, given the strong positions that the panelists have taken. Let's take the next subject. The increased spending on petrol subsidy is preventing Nigeria from taking advantage of the rise in the price of crude oil to over $100 per barrel, oil marketers said on Friday. Brent, the crude against which Nigeria's oil is priced, jumped above $100 per barrel on Thursday, a leap recorded for the first time since 2014, as the invasion of Ukraine by Russian forces heightened anxiety in the global energy space. The commodity traded at $103.47 per barrel on Thursday, moving up by $6.47 or 6.68%, before it later fell to 97.8 per barrel as at 3:40 p.m. on Friday. Oil sector operators say the increase in crude oil prices will cause a rise in the amount spent by the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited as subsidy on petrol. The NNPC has been the sole supplier of petrol into Nigeria for more than 4 years, and the firm has been subsidizing the products as approved by the federal government of Nigeria. Well, Chike, let me come to you. You are in the business of buying...
Business of buying what?
Buying fuel, whether it's PMS or aviation
We
fuel.
all buy fuel. We all need fuel.
But isn't it surprising
Yes.
that, all of a sudden, the Nigerian government is saying high spot price of Brent crude is not good for Nigeria?
Wow.
I thought in the past we used to hear that, if the spot price of crude oil is going up, then the country will make more revenue. But now we're hearing that, if we make more money, there will be a problem with subsidy, there will be a problem with our foreign exchange balances. So what really is the problem? I mean, is it about production, the fact that we cannot meet our production quota?
Yeah.
Is this about oil theft?
Yeah.
Is this about the general inefficiency that we're having to deal with? Chike, you are the oil man.
Yeah, no.
You are the only oil man. Yeah.
I have absolutely nothing to do with oil.
You are from the Niger Delta, that's why.
No, but I say I have nothing to do with oil. You are also from the Niger Delta. Anyway, doctor, the truth is that it's a little bit of everything. And if you ask me, it is one of the tragedies of our situation where we have primary commodities. In this case, it's the same thing that happens with cocoa. We take out our beautiful cocoa from Ondo State and everywhere else, and then we import chocolates. You can imagine what will happen if we made lovely Nigerian chocolates and put them. Yes, and put them in the shelves of Tesco and all these other big supermarkets out there. The truth is that yes, with this subsidy payment and the fact that our refineries are not working, obviously, by the time we go through the round tripping of taking out the crude, getting it refined, of course, there's a cost that it goes through there, and bringing it back to Nigeria, all the money is gone. And therefore, there's no way you can have any comparative advantage, or you can have any advantage with the fact that there has been a higher price in the world market for crude. So what this says, it's simple, I think, and it is something that it is almost embarrassing, if you ask me, that at this time in our development, we still cannot get our refineries to work. Now we are waiting for a single individual's refinery, and we all feel that that is the silver bullet that will cure everything. Well, I mean, it's supposed to be massive capacity, but I can assure you that with the kind of population explosion we keep having here, our population will still keep on increasing. And very soon, if Dangote Refinery is all we are expecting to cure all our problems with fuel supply in Nigeria, then, I don't know what we are doing. I think we should start looking into building modular refineries, if nothing else. Small modular refineries all over the Delta. Get them well regulated so that you don't have this situation of pollution and soot and all that. And then that way we can beef up the output of what we have to take out. And then we can get them refined here, and then we can sell. Keep what we need for local consumption, sell what we have to sell, and that way we'll start making good foreign exchange as we used to do in the 70s and in the 60s.
Yemi Ademolekun.
Well, we started this conversation this year with remembering Occupy Nigeria 10 years ago. That was triggered by removal of subsidy. And because there was a discussion that subsidy will be removed this year. The government decided not to do it because it wasn't politically expedient to remove subsidy this year. But what has happened? Subsidy has, in a sense, been removed, but the government is not benefiting from it. So government is the sole importer of fuel. One of their contractors brought in bad fuel.
Four of them.
4 of them. Well, the 3 of them pointed at one, and the one has not said is not me. So I'll say one, because the three of them have sort of excused themselves and pointed out one.
Three were alleged.
Exactly, thank you. But I haven't seen, unless I've missed it, I haven't read any reports. All I've heard is that it's been investigated, but nothing has happened. So you know someone or who are possible culprits, nothing has happened. The GMD of NNPC was talking about we have enough to put back in the market to ensure that there's no scarcity, but the lines have continued. Not only have the lines have continued, people are buying PMS at 1,000 naira per litre, 400 naira per litre, and it's just we're looking into it. The people whose cars have been damaged, whose generators have been damaged, there was a talk of compensation that appeared in the statement. Again, nothing has happened. So I say all this to say that we're not serious. We were not serious 10 years ago. We're still not serious now. And that's why, despite the different things that could be done in terms, as Chike had said, refineries, make sure our refineries are working. We've been doing turnaround maintenance for a while. And it's an opportunity for a serious government to say, look, we have an opportunity to make money. We're struggling for our books to be balanced. And paying subsidies, we can't afford it at this rate. And you're already not benefiting from the subsidy anyway. So even if it was a strategic move of the government to do this in a way that eases it out, maybe say, you know what, only NNPC stations would sell it as a subsidized rate. So if you want to stay in line for 5 hours, feel free. But all the other players can sell it at whatever rate makes sense. But the point that we're still here is just that the government is still just not honest about what it is that we need to do and how we want to do it. So we're playing ostrich 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. As you said, $100, if it goes to 105, 110, we'll just be wringing our hands saying, oh, what a pity. We'll have been making money. Oh, what a pity. And it just shows just unseriousness. I don't know how else to say it than just say that we're very unserious.
Well, what I hear is that, look, if the spot price could keep increasing and we're able to meet our production quota OPEC is about 1.7 million barrels per day, but we have a shortfall of about 300,000 barrels per day. And then secondly, there's also the problem that the spot price of fuel is volatile.
Yep, of course.
If this were to be sustained over a period, maybe then we'll make some profit. But in that territory, nothing is certain, and there are even greater uncertainties within the domestic environment. But who is going to solve that problem? That's the question. Professor Akinterinwa.
I look at the problem differently. Differently because of the concept of good governance. Western definition believes that when there is public accountability, transparency, absence of corruption, all that will constitute good governance. But I think that as much as I want to agree with this, all these components of good governance must be defined by a preventive strategy, one that will look into the future, prepare for emergencies. You see, in Nigeria, whether the oil price is increasing, whether it is not, Nigeria is neither prepared for rise nor for the status quo.
We're unserious.
We are never, yes, I can use that particular word, serious. We are never serious by anything. So I am not bothered about these factors of productivity, all those things you are talking about. Are we serious about productivity? We are not. So this is the issue. I think that in this type of situation, if we redefine good governance in the context of preparing for emergencies, in the context of anticipating problems, like we do have, I think it was Professor Arowaro who is talking about preparing, and Professor Gideon Fortu, preparing for the consequences of a third world war. Yes, then we will be doing well. But we are having all these problems in Nigeria today simply because our lifestyle is deal with this current problem. Disregard, careless about what happened yesterday, and forget completely what comes tomorrow. That's the problem. That's why we have always been talking about a foreign policy that is reactive.
Because we don't teach history. So
We don't, well, history has been knocked off, and which is most unfortunate. Even civics that we were taught in primary schools, know all those things. We destroy all those things without necessarily even funding, the science subjects. So what is it that we are really doing good? And yet we take the microphone to be talking to the whole world that we are this, we are that.
Giants of Africa.
So that is self-deceit, and we cannot make any progress with self-deceit.
Okay, Professor Arowaro, your take on this subject, very quickly, so that we can take one more subject before we wrap up today's program. Professor Arowaro, over to you.
Okay, I would like to begin by saying that civic education is now being taught again, and history is also back on the curriculum, the subjects in the secondary school. We thank the government for that, because all of this will help us to make progress socially, politically, and otherwise. On the fuel crisis and the rise in the price of crude petroleum, which is supposed to be an advantage to us, but government is saying it is also something not positive. It just speaks to our collective failure, the tragedy of inaction over the years. How can a country of over 200 million people not have the capacity to refine 1 barrel of oil? It is stunning. And that is why we are where we are. Ordinarily, the fact that Nigeria is an oil-producing, oil-exporting, because that's crude oil, that is. I mean, what has happened now, the price of crude oil gone up to $100 per barrel. We should be celebrating, we should be jubilating, because that should give us excess revenue and foreign exchange. But the fact that we are not able to refine the crude petroleum, the crude oil, and we have to import everything, whatever we gain with the right hand from selling crude oil disappears, from the left hand when we import refined products. And that is where the problem lies. I agree entirely with Chike, his submission that the government is unable to get refineries to work. About 4 or 5 years ago or so, Vice President Yemi Ademolekun went to the Niger Delta and talked about encouraging modular refineries to spring up here and there to be able to, meet an aspect of some percentage of our domestic consumption. But nothing has happened since then. It's just unimaginable that we are here sitting down and we are just talking. The country cannot refine 1 barrel of oil. We have to import everything, and then look for a trillion naira, or even more than a trillion naira. At the last count, we're talking about 2 trillion naira subsidy on petroleum products. In fact, I'm short of words. But moving forward, I mean, it's not too late to start doing something. Moving forward, we should look beyond Dangote Refinery and see what we can do, because Dangote Refinery alone will not be adequate, just like Chike said. And in any case, Dangote Refinery is a private, an enterprise. It can decide to export. In fact, where it is located is in the zone where it's supposed to be exporting. And so, while we are looking for the Dangote Refinery to start working to be able to, cushion some of these negative effects, we should also, all the other, avenues, modular refinery, and the refineries that are forever been going, through turnaround maintenance, attention should be focused on them to work, such that when we have things like this, that the price of crude oil goes up, we should be jubilated. We had a oil windfall in the past, 1991, even before then. But now we cannot talk about windfall because we are spending huge sums of money to import, refined products. These are things that they should make us not sleep. We should just fold our sleep our hands and then look for what we can do right now, so that moving forward, we'll not be, saying what we are saying now, that, oil price has gone up, it is not good for us.
Okay, thank you, Professor Arowaro. The next subject, I'm going to come back to you so that you lead the conversation. The Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, has said that any proposed increase in allowances and salaries by the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, that is not in sync with the National Salaries and Wages Commission will not scale through. The minister also advised the union to work with what was obtainable with the National Salaries, Income and Wages Commission and the Presidential Steering Committee on Salaries and Wages. The university teachers and the federal government had begun a series of negotiations aimed towards the suspension of the 4-week strike declared by the union. ASU, during its extraordinary National Executive Council meeting, held at the University of Lagos on February 14, 2022, had declared the action over what it claimed was a failure of the government to meet its lingering demands, including end allowances, release of rich bilateralization funds for universities, increase in salary scale of lecturers, deployment of the UTAS payment platform for university workers, among other issues. In the meantime, 2 other university unions, the Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities and the Non-Academic Staff Union, NASU, have both threatened to shut down the universities. Professor Arowaro, what's going on? You guys don't want to work, or the president or the government is the problem? Because now the Minister of Labour is saying, look, the money you guys are looking for, it's not, except it's provided for through the appropriate channel, you can't have it. And you guys are saying there's a 2009 agreement that the government has not implemented, and that this is about the sanctity of agreement. So who is telling the truth? Who is creating chaos within the university system? I can see you are on strike yourself. So, Professor Arowaro.
Well, it's unfortunate the things we are hearing, from the government end. We are very sad that, the university system has to go through these incessant, strike actions, disrupting the whole calendar. To just give a picture of, the situation we are confronted. The students who were supposed to come in 2020 couldn't come in 2020 because of the strike that took 9 months of 2020. They finally came in at the end of, 2021. They have lost a year. And also about a month. And then 14th of February, that is a week or a little over a week ago, they are back home. So 1 year of their lives wasted already, and we don't even know how much more time, of their life will be wasted in the 4-year program. These are things you are conscious of, and they are things that are very concerning to us. But you see, we have an agreement, 2009, memorandum of, the agreement. And then we have had a memorandum of action on top of that agreement. If the minister is saying, the money that the university lecturers are looking for increase in salaries and all that has to go through all that. The memorandum of action that should have made this happen was signed a year ago, over a year ago. What has happened between then and now? That it is now that ASU has gone on strike, that the government is now saying, it has to go through the process of revenue mobilization, fiscal commission and all that. So these are the issues. It makes you wonder what we are doing. Are we serious? Are we serious people at all? At this point, in between then and now, all of these issues ought to have been sorted out. We didn't need a strike for the memorandum of action that has been signed with government to be implemented. But we now require a strike for us to even remember that there are processes that these things ought to go through. What if there were no strike? So the government should, the way, because of course, at the end of the day, how us, that is the lecturers, and our children, the students in school, how everybody will be, will make progress is what us. And what we will say is that government should be serious. Everything that is required to be done for all the things the government has agreed to do. We're not talking about memorandum of understanding, but talking about memorandum of action. All that is required to be done so that those demands can be met should be done very quickly so that this strike can be called off. I will return to work and our children return to school. The government is aware of all the, these things have been negotiated. What was signed is action to be taken. And government knows what to be done for, this action to be effected such that, the strike will be called off. In any case, the strike that was declared on, last week was a warning strike that will last for 1 month. Issues are not addressed, it becomes a full-blown strike. So we have a window to attend to these issues effectively, seriously, to prevent the warning strike from,
from becoming a permanent strike.
A strike. A little bit.
Okay, Professor Arowaro.
What the minister is saying.
Professor Arowaro, I get your point there. But quickly, Yemi Ademolekun.
Professor Arowaro talks about a 2009 agreement when 2022, that's 13 years. So yes, government, it seems unserious is the theme for this afternoon's conversation. So yes, government is unserious, but I dare say ASU is also very unserious. And Professor Arowaro is talking about it. So if someone who didn't obey a 2009 agreement and in 13 years is the same thing that you're doing, and you think suddenly they're going to wake up and be like, wow, we really care about ASU and we really care about our students, so we're going to do the right thing. I've said this before and I'll continue to see it. The federal government should free ASU. Call ASU's bluff and say, you know what, you want to strike to your heart's content. Go and find your own money. We'll give you a bulk amount of money every year for infrastructure, student bursaries, end. Because I think, and it's very unfortunate that it's the citadel of learning, quote and unquote, that has intellectuals engaging with the federal government or successive federal governments that have shown no intent or no appreciation for the institution of learning, that we keep engaging as if we're pricing tomatoes in the market. Oh, you signed this one, you should give us this, you should give us this. Go and raise your own money. Fund your universities yourself. Collect money from government, from bursaries, and let this thing move. It's very painful watching our first generation universities that were on par with some of the best universities across the world descend into what they've become. You drive into an Ife or Ibadan, a Unilag today, and you're wondering, where am I? And so, yes, government is unserious, but ASU is just as unserious as the federal government.
Okay, coming from someone who grew up in the university community.
Yes.
That's
and I say it with my chest.
Interesting.
Yes.
You say it with what?
My chest, boldly.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Prof, quickly, so that Chike can also put in a word.
I think we need to differentiate between real problems and anticipated problems. What ASU is asking for is the agreement you already signed, the money you are owing.
Which they are not going to pay.
No, hold on. You see, you said that ASU is not serious. In fact, the seriousness of ASU is explained by the fact that it has remained very consistent.
13 years, what university education in this country become this thing? And you're calling that seriousness?
No, hold on. Let me tell you. ASU is compelling, asking people who have, ears to hear, telling people who have eyes to see that, look, this problem is there. Our government, we have agreed that, look, it's not serious. So, and they want the government to be serious. It's as simple as that.
Shouldn't be serious.
The seriousness is in the fact that they are compelling, they are arguing.
They're arguing by shutting down universities for 2 years.
You are asking the university to go and raise funds.
Yes.
Fine. The enabling laws must be redefined.
So that should be their fight. Not all this one that we're fighting about money for 13 years. And you're closing down universities. You're turning 4-year degrees into 8-year degrees.
Is this about seriousness or the sanctity of agreement?
For me,
or the education system in Nigeria?
This, for me, is just a reality check. And I understand Yemi's frustration. I also share that frustration because I'm a product of the first-class university system we had in Nigeria.
Which university?
University of Lagos. I had 2 degrees from there in the 80s and all of that.
You're allowed.
And the truth is that, like Yemi said, 13 years and, we're still going and saying the same thing. Obviously, governance and finances that are available to the government even gets worse by every successive year. So really, we should move away from that concept that served us well when Nigeria was working. Nigeria is not working the way it should be working, and we should redefine these things. Like Professor said, if we have to take it back to the National Assembly to redefine these laws, the better.
Yes.
But these institutions have to become self-financing so they can give quality education. People are doing 3-year courses for 7-8 years now. This is not education.
I can't build in Nigeria that way.
You know,
Well,
it is
thank
terrible.
you. Thank you very much, Chike. Thank you very much, Professor Arowaro. Thank you, Ademolekun, Yemi Ademolekun, and Professor Akinterinwa. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. For my entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next week.